Representative Brown,
Present.
Representative Campbell,
Present.
Representative Lean,
Here.
Representative Lucas,
Present.
Representative Riggins, excused, Representative Storer,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Representative Worf, and Chairman Locke. Okay. We have 7 present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
And I know that Representative Worf should be here shortly, so. Well, I wanted to say welcome to everybody who is in the room, and thank you for coming and to this event. I will probably, most of the people who are in this room do this quite often, so we won't spend a lot of decorum time, but please, as always, be respectful. Today, we are going over 3 bills here in the Revenue Committee, as some would say, 3 simple little bills. I always say that, and I regret it later. But HJ4, Constitutional Amendment, Veterans Property Tax Exemption will be first. Then it will be HB 214, Local Government Payments, Electronic Payments, and then House Bill 126, Sales Tax on Service Repeal. And so we'll do them in that order. So we'll start off with House Joint Resolution Number 4, Constitutional Amendment, Veterans Property Tax Exemption. And let's see, I think hopefully I've covered all the important things to get started here. Just remember, everyone, please address through the chairman. Make sure we keep the conversation through me so we keep it organized and move ahead fairly quickly. All right, we'll get going here. This bill is presented by Representative Stivar. And Representative Stivar, please present the bill.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, committee. I bring you House Joint Resolution 4, Constitutional Amendment, Veterans Property Tax. We're just going to add a section in Article 15, Section 12 of the Wyoming Constitution, exempting primary residence of a veteran that's been deemed 100% or service-connected 100% through the VA. That way we can get in the Constitution, we can take care of our disabled veterans. You know, only about 1% of citizens sign up for the military. You know, they signed on the dotted line to protect this country. And I think we need to take care of them. And that's the gist of the bill. I'll stand for questions.
Any questions to the bring of the bill? Representative Lean.
Thank you for bringing this. And I just have one question about, do you anticipate that this would bring an influx of veterans to our state?
Representative Stivar.
Locke, Representative Lane. No, 20 states are already doing this. Different portions, but there's 20 states that are out there doing it now. Should have brought it up. I'm worked with this bill. Don't take it personal, Air Force, but with an Air Force officer, Scott O'Grady. He was the F-16 pilot that was shot down in Bosnia. I've worked real close with him on this bill.
Any other questions for the representative? So I want to just make sure we explain this piece really well, and that's, as I understand it, so can you talk to the surviving spouse component of this in just a little bit of detail, just to make sure everybody understands the bill thoroughly?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Representative.
Kind of slow this morning, it's too early,
ahead,
not enough
Representative.
coffee. But this would also, for the 100% surviving, the spouse of a 100% disabled veteran, if they pass, it'd go on to their spouse if they do not remarry, and that remains their primary residence. You know, because when that other spouse goes, they lose, at least half their income. And I don't want to throw anything on a spouse that's been with them.
Thank you. So, I'm just going to, for clarification, so a person who got this, a veteran who got this exemption, he dies, the spouse is still there, that spouse in that house retains that exemption as long as they haven't remarried. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was completely accurate. Thank you. Yes.
And just point of
Represent-
clarification, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stivar, early, I guess, for me. And owner occupied, so the owner must occupy the residence in order to keep the exemption.
Chairman Locke,
Representative
Representative
Stivar.
Locust, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stivar, could you help explain to everyone why you're bringing this as a constitutional amendment rather than a piece of statute? Thank you.
Representative
Locke,
Stivar.
Chairman Locke, Representative Storer. The reason I'm bringing it as a Constitution Amendment, I want the citizens of Wyoming to decide if this is what we're going to do. Because in the past legislatures, us as a body have went in there and tried to tweak, like the 3,000, which now is 6,000, to reduce that funding. This I want permanent for these disabled veterans. And I think the citizens of Wyoming should be the ones to decide.
Thank you, Mr. Representative hang on a second. Representative Wharf. Representative Storer, you had a follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stivar, does this have it seems like sometimes the state hasn't always funded this. In other words, created I think a backfill for it, for counties and other entities that would be collecting the property tax. So would this require that the state do that?
Representative Stivar.
Chairman Locke, Representative Storer. On the fiscal note, there is no backfill. And we don't backfill where this is being put in the Constitution. We don't backfill the exemptions in there either. So there's going to be no backfill on this.
Representative Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I had for the bringer, what happens when, as we all will eventually pass? Okay, and this veteran has passed, their spouse passes. The house, when it's either given to the kids or sold to somebody else, will it go back into the taxable market?
Representative
Chairman
Stivar.
Locke, Representative Wharf, that is correct. It'll go back into the market.
Thank you.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stivar, as long as the veteran, the disabled veteran is alive, under this, can they go ahead and change residences?
Representative Stivar.
Chairman Locke, Representative Brown, yes. And that tax exemption would go off their property they've got now onto their new piece of property. It's at the residence.
Other questions? Okay, quick question. Do you have a feel for the number of these veterans that we have in the state? Is that something you have, Representative Stivar, or is that
Chairman Locke,
probably not the fiscal note very well, but
it's in the fiscal note. About 2,965 throughout the state.
okay.
And I believe that come from a gentleman who will be here up next to speak on this.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions? Representative Stivar? Okay, thank you, and guess we'll move to the department. Do you guys want to speak on this at all, or? Okay. Thank you,
Morning,
sir.
Mr. Chairman. I'm Tim Shepard. I'm the Director of the Wyoming Veterans Commission. Good morning to the committee. Last week, the the Veterans Commission met, that's all 12 commissioners representing all parts of the state, and unanimously concurred with this bill. We think it's clearly in the best interest of a portion of our veteran population and would love to see it enacted. If I might, one area where we would like to see a slight amendment is where it talks about 100%, and I'm on page 3, line 7, 100%. And we think the intent is that this is really for those who are total and complete. So we would request that that be a part of the language. So what we would have it read is, the adoption of this amendment would provide a property tax exemption for the primary residence of a veteran who is determined by law as having a service-connected disability of 100% and/or total and complete.
Is that a kind of a common way to present that, and/or would you say totaling
Total and complete, Mr. Chairman.
complete disability? Does that need to be in there? Total and complete.
Total and complete.
Sorry, I wasn't catching that, okay. Okay, and that's a common phrasing for this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Very good, thank you. Any questions? Representative Lean?
Thank you for coming today. Can I ask, do you know with the amendment, would that expand the group of individuals that this would cover?
Mr. Chairman, for the representative, yes, it slightly. There are an occasional veteran who is, their total rating is less than 100%, but they are deemed to be total incomplete. I don't have that total figure for you today. I can certainly work with those who do have that information and bring that back to the committee.
Thank you, that'd be helpful. Other questions? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. That was kind of following up on what Representative Lean was saying, because 95% disabled is very disabled. Is that going off of the military department, or who dictates what metric they use to determine that?
Mr. Chairman, for
Shepherd.
you, for the representative, it's determined by the Veterans Administration through a pretty laborious process of looking at the veteran, looking at their service, where were they service-connected for an injury or an illness, and then determining an overall rating.
Representative Campbell?
Follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again. I'm to read this. This also includes, this is all veterans. For example, if somebody was to be stuck in a boiler room in diesel fumes and got their lungs, and not conflict related. Is that correct?
Mr. Shepherd?
Mr. Chairman, for the representative, that's correct.
Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Shepherd? Thank you, Mr. Shepherd.
All right, thank you,
Appreciate- thank
Mr.
so
Chairman.
much. Does the Department of Revenue like to come up? Thank you, Director, for showing up, for being here today. We appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. My role today is simply to provide clarification and answer any questions that you may have. This bill creates a new exemption. Just wanted to clarify this language does not impact the other veterans exemption we have that is in Title 39 that went up to the 6,000 assessed dollars for 2025. So this exemption that's pursuant to the Constitution would be in addition to that. And so the only piece of clarification that we would ask is with the language here where it states the primary residence, including not more than 25 acres of associated land, that is clear. We're wondering if the intent is that the veteran own the property, or is it acceptable that the veteran rent a property? It does not state if it is the intent of this body that it be owned by the veteran. Perhaps an amendment on line 9, right at the beginning, that would say residence owned by a veteran who is certified as having permanent and total service-connected disability. Otherwise, as I read this, it would just be the property taxes wherever that qualifying veteran resides. So it could be either way. We just are asking for clarification on that. And the other piece would be the suggested language by Mr. Shepherd, if that could also be included in the body of the statute, the constitutional language, in addition to that section 2 that does not reside in the Constitution. So perhaps adding that language, should you decide to, after the 100% on line 10, or perhaps, I correct that, perhaps, maybe it's after line 11, after comma and law. Just some thoughts. But again, this would be a separate exemption. It would not be funded. We anticipate that there will be a rule promulgation process. You may wish to somehow incorporate that the Department of Revenue would promulgate rules, because this really doesn't state, the sponsor's absolutely right. When we put it in the Constitution, we don't have to have anything in Title 39. But for everything that's in this constitutional exemption statute, we currently have something in Title 39 that speaks to how it's administered. And so should this constitutional question pass the voters, I would encourage this body to go back into Title 39 in the exemption statute and clarify, where does the veteran apply for this exemption? You know, who deems whether it's granted or not? Does the Department of Revenue have a rule promulgation authority? Those are the types of things that would follow should this pass. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. Good to see you again. 2 questions. So remind me, and you'd think I'd know this because I've read a whole bunch of these bills now, but do other property tax relief / exemption specify owner?
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry,
Representative Lucas, they do.
Okay. And then,
Representative Lucas.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, you said that this is in addition to the other veteran exemption, but if this one exempts all, then the other one wouldn't apply, would it?
Mr.
Director.
Chairman, Representative Lucas, so the other one, if you don't own your primary residence, the veteran still has the ability to use that $6,000 assessed dollars on any vehicle that they may own. So they can and still get that. Now, keep in mind, there are other criteria for receiving the other veterans exemption. Now, service-connected disability obviously is one of those that enables them to qualify for that, but there's still a 3-year residency. There's other pieces in that legislation. Those qualifying factors would not be applicable based on the language in this constitutional change.
Thanks for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think it would be applicable to put in a residency in this too?
Director.
Your opinion, please.
Mr. Chairman, that is certainly a policy decision that this body, we require a 3-year Wyoming resident for the other veterans exemption. So it's, as it reads right now, they could move here. As long as they have 100% service-connected disability, they would qualify for a full exemption of their primary residence, if they owned it, I'm thinking.
Thank you, Director. Representative Worf.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Director Hanson, the question I had, you mentioned how if this passes a constitutional amendment, we would still have to come up with some process. Can you tell me, because I know there's other things, like it lists religious worship, church parsonages, church schools, et cetera. Do they also have a process whereby they have to register through the state in order to qualify for that exemption, or because they're in the Constitution, is it automatically granted?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worf, so if you go to Title 39, section, Chapter 11, 105, you'll find some of that criteria. So property of the United States, state, counties, cities, towns, when used primarily for a governmental purpose, those do not typically apply. But I will tell you that, we know the Wyoming Capitol is used for a governmental purpose. So do we have an application on file typically for the Capitol? No. But if it appears that that building is not being used for a governmental purpose, then absolutely, anytime there's got to be some communication between the property owner and the assessor's office on when they apply exemptions, there is an application process. And so as we look through here, if a church purchases a property, they have to apply and tell the assessor, yes, we're going to use it for religious worship. We're going to use it as a church parsonage. So there has to be that application process. Initially, it's not typically every year. It says right when the assessor grants that exemption that should the use change, you'll need to notify the county assessor and reevaluate that. So we'll just need to put together a process in my mind.
Representative
Follow up,
Worf.
and the reason I ask is because I assume there must be some process already kind of in place. I know that this will be dependent upon, I would think, working in close association with the Veterans Association, because they're going to deal with the designation. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to bring that. So I would assume that that would be something you guys would kind of coordinate, because I'm assuming you're going to be counting on them to be actually saying this is in fact a disabled veteran that meets the qualifications.
Mr. Chairman.
Director.
Representative, we work very closely with the Veterans Commission on our other veterans exemption property tax relief. Now, what I will say is that it's a conversation between the veteran and the local county assessor. It isn't that we reach out to the Veterans Commission to get that documentation. You may recall that there's also a provision that's not administered by the county assessor, but administered by your local county treasurer related to veterans with service-connected disabilities and their license plate. In that, for that exemption, veterans provide that document that they receive to the county treasurer to receive a reduction on their license plate. So we would envision that that process would be very similar for this type of an exemption. It still takes communication between that veteran and wherever the administration of this is placed.
And I just wanted
Representative Worf.
to ensure, Mr. Chairman, that the process, it's not going to be so encumbering that it's going to be disabilitating for you guys to be able to satisfy that. That's the only reason I'm asking, is it's not going to involve a bunch more reinventing the wheel.
Director Cole.
Mr. Chairman, I think administratively, I'm not speaking for the county assessors, but I believe that the county assessors can incorporate this, because for the most part, most of these veterans are used to the process for the other veterans exemption. It's just recognizing this. So I really think that where the challenge is going to be is education for the veterans. And I know the Veterans Commission Department of Revenue, county assessors across the state, county treasurers, everyone will be engaged in trying to clarify to that veteran, if you use the constitutional exemption on your primary residence that you own, then you can use your other veterans exception on your license plates or, so I think it's just education.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions, the Director? Does anyone?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that. And any other public comment on this joint resolution? Thank you, Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I was 30 years active duty in the Navy in the nuclear submarine world. I'm a disabled veteran. However, I'm not 100%, so I would not benefit from this. But I would remark that we have some grievously wounded veterans out there that this would apply to. One of the ships I commanded had a medical department with 3 doctors in it, one of whom was a surgeon. And he and I, once upon a time, had a conversation where he was talking about medical technology and capabilities, and he remarked that, we're saving lives today because we have such advanced technology that maybe we shouldn't. And he was particularly talking in the realm of traumatic brain injury. And so you can entirely have a 22-year-old veteran that is 100% disabled, has a family, spouse and children, and will have a long life. And the remuneration at 100% that comes from the VA is on the order of $3,300 a month. And so something like this would add to that family's cash flow. So subject to your questions, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Thank you so much. Any other public comment on this joint resolution? All right, we will close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill?
Move the bill.
Okay, I think I heard Representative Lean first, and Representative Worf seconded that. I'll take that move as a second. Okay, very good. So let's work the bill, committee. Obviously, we just start on page 2 here. And I know we had a couple of comments on things that would improve it. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the Veterans Commission bringing in line 10, after 100% right total impairment as provided by law. And also on page 3, line 7, total impairment. Same wording there. I don't know how to word that.
The wording that at least that I heard, do we do and/or total and complete?
Yes.
Complete.
Is that, and so we would insert that in,
On both lines.
on
10.
both lines, 10, right after 100%, after the parentheses there, right? As provided by law, and that would be and/or total and complete, I believe is the verbiage that we would use right there. Okay? And do you, that's that amendment?
That's my amendment.
Okay, very good. All right, so he's moved an amendment, committee. Any second? Seconded by Representative Worf. Very good. Discussion on the amendment.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, if we also need it on page 3 after 100%.
I believe that was the intent. I believe that was the intent to do it on both page 2 and page 3, is my understanding.
That's what I heard as well. So, okay. So on both pages. So So let me be clear then. It's right after 100% on line 10 on page 2. We add and/or total and complete. And then on page 3, line 7, right after 100%, and/or total and complete. Okay? So is the amendment clear to everyone then? Okay. Any other questions? All right. All right, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that amendment is in there. Any other amendments?
Question.
Aye.
Oh,
Representative
Mr.
Stivar.
Chairman, I'd like to get the director to come up and explain the amendment she wanted, because that made a lot of sense and I didn't get it wrote down. If,
Thank you, Director. I should have probably just asked you to stay here. I apologize. for-
I mean, her amendment made a lot of sense to me. That's something I didn't think about when I was drafting this. So I'd like her to go over that amendment again.
Thank you, Director. So I know your goal was to insert owned somewhere, and I kind of took a bit of a note, but it probably is not accurate. So let's just think about, do you have a thought on exactly where you'd like to insert that, or you'd recommend that?
Mr. Chairman, again, Brenda Henson.
Yeah.
You could put it a couple of places,
Okay.
but on line 7, where it states, "And the primary residence owned by a veteran, including not more than 25 acres of associated land of the veteran who is certified as having a permanent and total service-connected disability."
That makes sense. Okay. That might be the best place. Okay, thank you, Director. That's helpful. I just wanted to get that where it made sense in there. Thank you. Representative Stivar?
I'll make that.
Okay.
Motion as a.
So, Representative Stivar made a motion that a second amendment here where we insert right after and the primary residence owned by a veteran. Between residence and the comma there in line 7. And Representative Stivar moved that amendment. Representative Brown seconded that. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. This has been amended. Any other amendments? Oh, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, line 5, to be consistent with the amendment we just passed, I would delete the word "of" and insert "owned by." So that the line would read, "The adoption of this amendment would provide a property tax exemption for the primary residence owned by a veteran," et cetera.
Thank you, Representative Storr. So Representative Lucas has seconded that amendment request. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. Thank you, Representative Storr. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might ask the director to come back up one more time. Sorry about that. I think the question of, do we want a section 3 about propagating rules? I just looked at a couple of the other constitutional amendment bills we've had in the last few years, and I don't see that language in those bills. But clearly, should this pass, put it on the ballot, it passes, we would then want to go in and probably propagate those rules, as well as probably have a bill to put it into statute, as you suggested, and also perhaps redo the section 3913-105 that has the other veterans exemption in it. I'm just trying to figure out which of all of that should we put into this bill and what would make sense.
Director, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storr, I think providing guidance to the Legislative Service Office, your suggestion of a Section 3 would be appropriate. And I think that it can be fairly vague in what's in, something basically that states, following the passage of this constitutional change, the legislature shall incorporate language within Title 39 that would provide administrative guidance.
Representative Storer?
Thank you. Director, maybe we should, the sponsor of the bill could work on that. We could bring an amendment on Committee of the Whole.
Yes. Yes,
get the right-
I concur with that. Just get with Legislative Service Office and do that.
Representative Wharf?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I don't want to clutter the bill any more than we need to. And I guess I look at it, if this passes a constitutional amendment, would the department not in fact already go to that process? Because otherwise, you got a constitutional amendment that the citizens have approved. I would think that's going to be an automatic, it's going to come back to the Department of Revenue, is going to come back and say, we need, since it's now been passed as an amendment, we need to do this. I don't know, I guess that's my question. Does it have to be in the bill, or is it something that is going to happen that would naturally follow that constitutional amendment?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Wharf, that's an interesting question. We find ourselves, and this is not related to this constitutional amendment, but we find ourselves right now in a situation where our Constitution has been changed related to classification of property, and really no requirement of the legislature to determine what that means. And so I think that a very vague statement in a Section 2, it wouldn't be in law, because it's not, anything in those additional sections, that language doesn't actually go into the green books. But I do think that at least something, we need guidance from the legislature after this passes to say, where do they apply? We don't have that, and I understand your concern about cluttering up this bill with it being a constitutional amendment, but just a simple statement, I think, might give guidance to future legislators that aren't sitting at the table this year.
Thank you, Director. Representative Moore?
Mr. Chairman, then with that, I guess I would recommend that we don't do anything further with the bill, that we move this forward, that the bringer of the bill can talk to LSO and get some guidance. Because I don't know that we want to put anything else in the bill, because how do we instruct them to do something if we don't know it's going to be adopted, is what I keep, my little pea brain keeps rattling around there saying, if it's not a constitutional amendment, why are we telling them to do something? So with that, that would be my, I guess, recommendation to the group.
Thank you, Director, and thank you. So just a quick conversation on that. You kind of mentioned that we can look into it moving toward Committee of the Whole. Is the committee comfortable with that? Okay, so I think it's any other amendments or anything of concern? Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. It was a good discussion. Appreciate that, Representative Storer. And Representative, question? Okay, very good. Please call the roll.
This is a roll call vote on House Joint Resolution HJ4 as amended. Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Campbell?
Aye.
Representative Lean?
Aye.
Representative Lucas?
Aye.
Representative Riggins left an absentee vote of aye. Representative Storer?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
Aye.
Representative Wharf?
Aye.
Chairman Locke?
Aye.
We have 9 aye, Mr. Chairman.
Great, okay, so Joint Resolution 4 constitutional amendment, veterans property tax exemption, has been approved as amended. We'll move to the floor. Okay. All right, the next bill for discussion today is House Bill 214, local government payments, electronic payments. And thank you, Representative Thayer, for bringing this bill, and I will present the bill, and please proceed when you are ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Locke and Revenue Committee members. This bill in front of you is pretty straightforward. It is an act relating to cities and towns and counties authorizing local governments to pay claims and demands through electronic payment means. It is amending statute 15-1-125B, 15-4-302A, 18-3-511A, 18-3-810, and 18-3-811 are amended. And so cities and towns, statutes for cities and towns. This is another tool for the local governments to pay their vendors. It can provide saving money and efficiency for our local governments. Unfortunately, checks are getting intercepted in the mail, and they're being washed. And washing a check use household chemicals, such as things we have in our cabinets, such as acetane, which is nail polish remover, or bleach. And then they're being cashed. What happens is they rewrite the amount and the payee. There's also software. I was just made aware yesterday that there's actually software now to make checks. I have worked with our treasurer and our clerk and other counties along I-80, and they are very open and support this amendment to these statutes. And also, I talked with the president of Wyoming County Treasurers Association and supporting this. Again, using this as a tool, monthly reoccurring payments. Treasurer West last night told me, it's not something that they're going to do with like paying election judges, once or twice a year. That's just getting their account numbers. That wouldn't be the point of this amendments to the local governments. Also make you guys aware that in 2005, House Bill 104 was passed with direct deposits. I think that's kind of interesting. They used the word direct deposits 20 years ago for payroll only. So our local governments have already been doing electronic payments. It's just been on their payroll. I want to just walk through the bill just on the highlights. The 15-1-125 are for our local municipalities. And as you can see, it really is pretty straightforward. We just added on page 2, line 2, it says may. This is a tool, again, an option. And so what we've done on this bill is just take out or just add that they have a choice of electronic payments or a transfer system. I've talked to quite a few of our local banks, and the president and shareholder of one of our local banks in Rollins supports this. He explained to me that we just recently had a check that was washed, and it was for 20 times the amount. And he felt that he was extremely lucky that they got the money back for the county, and sometimes that doesn't happen. And so then we look at, someone's got to cover that check loss, whether it's the local governments or the banks. And the other point he brought up was that the amount of time that they spend trying to figure out the fraud and getting their money back, they could be working with their small businesses. And so I thought that was a really good point, that, it's taking away from doing some good work for our towns and small businesses. Again, this is just an option. I think that was pretty straightforward. So with that, Chairman Locke, I ask for your favorable consideration and stand for questions.
Thank you, Representative Thayer. Questions for Representative Thayer? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, I'd like to ask you, do you have any idea what percentage of checks are being intercepted like this? Is there any number that you have?
So
Representative Thayer.
thank you, Chairman Locke, Representative Brown, for the question. So on the fraud side, it shows was getting percentages and everything. The percentage is that there is more physical manipulation on checks than there is ACH fraud. And that came off a national website, that fraud is happening across the board, but that physical, because they can physically manipulate a check versus versus an ACH payment.
Thank you, Representative Thayer. Representative Brown, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is relating to the state of Wyoming.
Okay.
So you gave us a national thing that's going on across the board, but I'm specifically asking about Wyoming.
Representative Thayer.
Chairman Locke, Representative Brown, I do not have any state figures at this time.
Okay. Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Thayer. A question I had, I know most of the time when you start doing things through electronic means, there's a fee associated with that. I don't see anywhere in here who pays that. Is the state paying the processing fees? Counties paying it? Because I don't see that mentioned anywhere in the bill, but I assume that there are fees associated with this.
Representative Thayer.
Yes, thank you. Great question, Chairman Locke, Representative Worf. Yes, there is a fee for the ACH, but it is significantly cheaper to process an ACH versus a paper check. So that would be incurred by the local governments. Same as writing a check, putting it in an envelope, putting a stamp on it.
Thank you, Representative Thayer. Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Thayer, thank you. This is very interesting. So because the local governments, and I assume all of them, have not been using electronic funds transfer or e-checks for payments, that they have been prohibited from doing so?
Representative Thayer.
Chairman Locke and Representative Lucas, great question. That is correct. Per their statute, which is statutes 15 for cities and towns and 18 for counties, they are not allowed to do electronic payment except for when the bill was passed in 2005 for paying payroll.
Other questions? Representative Lean.
Thank you for coming today. Did you find out from the counties, do they have the digital infrastructure to withstand this?
Representative Thayer.
Chairman Locke, Representative Lean, great question. Yes, they do. They are already doing ACHs for their payroll.
Other questions for Representative Thayer? And Representative Thayer, just a quick question. You said it, but I'm just verifying. I noticed, as you said, it says may. So this is just giving them an option. We're not forcing anything on different counties. This is just if they want to use it, it's just making it available. Is that accurate?
Chairman Locke, that is correct. Just another tool in their toolbox.
Thank you. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you so much. And maybe don't go too far just in case we have more questions, but does the department want to discuss this at all, or is there anybody else who would like to speak on this? If you're okay staying, that we would welcome you to stay there if you don't mind. I've gotten to the point where maybe we keep people there a little bit longer as long as the seats aren't full, just in case we have questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Bob McLaurin with Wyoming Association of Municipalities.
Sorry, can you say your name a little clearer? I'm sorry.
Bob McLaurin.
Bob McLaurin. Okay, thank you, Bob.
With
I'm sorry.
WAM. We like this bill. We appreciate the representative bringing it, and many of our cities will be using it in the near future. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. McLaurin.
There we go. Morning, Mr. Chairman. Mark Cowan, Sweetwater County Treasurer. I appreciate this bill. We do have the infrastructure in place to process these electronic payments. It's very time-consuming for us to issue checks. Many of our special districts will receive a check and not cash them for 6 or 8 months. We'll carry that on our balance sheet. Some of them don't cash them for years. And we end up having to go through that process. With the ACH process, the payment is electronically deposited into their account. We don't have to follow that fund anymore, and it's taken care of. For us, there's no fee. Our banks allow us to do ACHs for free. And the process is very secure. What happens for us is we submit a record of all the ACHs that we're going to do for that day, and then the bank actually sends back a confirm for us. And so we actually have a second party confirm all those transactions before they occur. Where a check, we send it out, we don't know who actually is going to cash it, what's going to happen there. With the ACH, we actually know, and we can verify it before the transaction occurs. It's a good bill. It's definitely going to save time for all of our special districts and everybody who receives a check from the counties as well. So, stand for questions.
Great. Any questions for these gentlemen? I have a quick question for you. So unfortunately, I'm a computer security guy, and so just very quickly, so you've already built a robust set of processes and procedures, and I'm kind of asking this to both of you, around your electronic processes to make sure, because you know there's fraud in that too, and I've actually worked many of those cases myself, as it turns out. But you've already got that process in place, so it's relatively easy for you guys to implement this, verify your accounts, and make sure those things don't get.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Very good question. Yes, and so what happens is when we set up an electronic transfer account, we verify with who the recipient is, the account. So we don't just receive that and then input it. We actually verbally communicate with them. And then if they request any changes, we actually go meet with them to make sure that, hey, you actually requested this change of account that we're gonna send the payment to. And so that's the process for us. It's not like they can just fax us or email us and say, hey, we want to change our account number this week, we're going to apply that. That's not the way it works. We actually, communicate with them. But it's a great question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's exactly how they usually get hijacked. It happens more frequently than we think, but I would assume that the counties have this bulletproof. So thank you. Any other questions for our presenter and our two gentlemen who speaking on their behalf, on the bill's behalf? Okay, thank you so much. And is there anyone else who would like to speak on this one? Okay, well, in this case, we will close public comment. Representative Stivar has moved it. Any seconds? Representative Wharf seconded that bill. And let's work the bill. Any amendments that the committee would like to discuss? Yes, Representative Lucas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent over 40 years working in banks, and I can tell you that this is a far more secure method of transmitting money than writing checks. It is far cheaper too, because it costs banks literally pennies to process an EFT. And sometimes they assess a service charge, but that's always an option. They don't have to do that. And so I think this is just a winner all the way along. It makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Representative Lucas. Any other comments, questions concerning on the bill, amendments? Seeing none. Questions? Please call the roll.
This is a roll call vote on House Bill 214, local government payments, electronic payments. Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Campbell.
Aye.
Representative Lean.
Aye.
Representative Lucas.
Aye.
Representative Riggins left an absentee vote of aye. Representative Storer.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Representative Wharf.
Aye.
Chairman Locke.
Aye.
We have 9 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
That was easy. Okay. House Bill 214, local government payments, electronic payments, has passed the committee. So Representative Thayer, thank you, and you will have it on the floor, I assume. So very good, that makes it easy. Okay, our next bill, for discussion is House Bill 126, Sales Tax on Service Repeal. Representative Filer, thank you for being here today. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, okay, thank you, Mr. Filer, and please proceed with the bill and ignore my vice chair.
Oh, I think it's great, you know. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll start off with a little icebreaker this morning. How's that? So, Mr. Chairman, what makes a happy rancher, or what is a happy rancher? A jolly rancher. All right. Good dad joke, huh? Okay. Well, anyways, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, hopefully I bring you a very simple bill. I'm pretty sure there'll be some pushback on it, but what this does is a sales tax and services repeal. If we look at our statutes on 3916-103, we're just kind of changing the statute to repeal services to repair, alter, or improve tangible personal property. How this came to me, and it is through a constituent who owns a mechanic shop in my district. And one of the things that he must do is collect sales tax on the tangible items, say an alternator, battery, whatever parts they're using on a vehicle. But he also, with the DOR, has to collect sales tax on his labor. So he brought this to me and said, if we could reduce the tax burden onto the consumer with my labor, because he already has to pay taxes on his labor through income tax and other things, but he could actually reduce his labor rates at his shop. And then also, I'm a firm believer that when we're looking at taxes all the way around, whether it's property tax or income taxes, state sales tax, I think we should look at the broader picture also. And I believe that this is one of those things that for collected sales tax, we should actually be able to touch it, tangible, we own it. We don't own our mechanics, our carpenters, or other folks like that, Mr. Chairman. But through the bill, it just specifies under that statute that we're just going to strike services to repair, alter, improve tangible personal property. And also on page 2 on Ruminant, or on Part B, it strikes out the same exact language. And then other than that, Mr. Chairman, that is the gist of the bill. But I do want everybody to take a look at the fiscal note, because I think that's where the pushback's going to be. I've already heard from, counties and places like that the almost $50 million cut that they're going to have to take around the state in different towns and counties, might be a little dramatic for them maybe with all the other tax cuts that are probably coming. But I did a little research, Mr. Chairman, and pretty much every dollar that we keep in the people's pockets ends up turning into about $5 or $7 in revenue. So I think keeping more money in the people's pockets is a good way for us to move forward, and also might actually help the state coffers instead of the deduction. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Filer? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Filer, I was one of the people in the trades. I was an electrician for 30 years. And so I'm wondering if a employee were to be able to buy their tools through their business with their employer, would they be exempt from paying taxes on those tools?
Representative Filer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I believe that would be under not a sales and use tax. I think that'd be under a totally different statute. But there is, IRS laws and tax codes that do help with that, yes. But not in this bill, Representative Brown.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry, I'm
Chairman.
gridlocked.
Thank you, Representative Filer, for being here. What are we going to do to account for that $50 million in revenue loss? I mean, that's a big number. You know, I'm looking 23 counties, 50 million, that's $2.5 million a county. That's a lot of money.
Representative Filer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Campbell, I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I brought the fiscal note forward to you, to actually point that out. But under the statistics that we have right now, if it's a $50 million cut to counties, but at the end of the day, we're putting $50 million back to the people. When you have the $50 million, when we, spread that out through our population, and they go to a store or whatever it might be, and they actually purchase something that's tangible, then we actually are recreating that revenue again. So I think it's pretty well, my personal opinion would be it's revenue neutral, or it could actually increase revenue. And we are actually keeping more money into people's pockets.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify what was just said, so this roughly $50 million is an estimate that is spread over 2 years and across 23 counties. So it's not a $50 million hit per county, but across the state. Am I
Representative
reading this right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lucas, you're absolutely correct.
Thank you.
It'd be a 2-year over the whole entire state, yes.
Other question? Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just to clarify, though, there's a hit to the general fund as well as to local funds, and those together in 1 year do equal $50 million. So it's not $50 million across 2 years. Is that correct?
Representative Filer, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storer, yes, if you look at the fiscal note, at general fund and local services fund, so we're going to, because that tax is split between our local towns, municipalities, and the state.
Right.
So the decrease to our general fund is, yes, 26. Well, if you look at the numbers right there on the first year, 26.2, and then also local service would be about 25.2. But it's both. So if we look at it that way, then towns and counties would actually only be losing 25. But if you add it up through the 2 years, it is 50, around that 50 million, even to the towns and counties.
Per year, roughly.
No, per every 2 years.
2 years.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, Representative Storer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Filer, can you help me understand which industries would be impacted the greatest from this tax break? Thanks.
Representative Filer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storer, impact in a positive way or negative way, if I could ask?
Representative Storer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm assuming in a positive way, but I'm just trying to understand who this really impacts and what industries specifically.
Representative Filer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storer, it depends on the industry and the service. Through the DOR, there's certain services that we, in statute, that we have to collect sales tax on. One of those is anybody that works on something that's tangible of yours as a consumer, you have to collect sales tax on that labor. So if your mechanic is working on your vehicle and they're actually touching the tangible part, which is your vehicle, we have to collect sales tax on their labor. So when we look at what service industries is this gonna, I think, help to not have to collect this tax and keep money into folks' pockets, is any of those services. If you have a carpenter replace your window in your house, you pay sales tax on the window, but they also have to, in the invoice, charge sales tax on their labor. And I think, so pretty much industry, trades, and services, that's where you're gonna see the best impact of this bill.
Other questions for Representative Filer? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Filer. Aren't we creating some disparity here? Are we being totally fair on this and I see that we're kind of favoring some services as opposed to others. I don't want to be picking and choosing winners here.
Thank you, Mr. Filer.
Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Filer, sorry.
Yeah, Representative Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, you're absolutely correct. We have had that difference for a while. There's a lot of services in the state of Wyoming that we don't collect sales tax on. And the reason why is because they're not working on something tangible. Like your CPA or, attorneys, stuff like that, they don't collect sales tax on because they're not touching something that's tangible. But they're still providing a service. And when somebody's providing you a service, I believe that labor, that time that they put in should not be taxable. But if they are, giving you a tangible item, then yes, that's different. You pay sales tax on your tangible item. But there has been a difference in our state for a long time where certain services were taxed and other services weren't.
Other questions for Representative Filer? That's great. And Representative Fowler, if you don't mind, maybe taking one of the ends, but letting the department come up just in case we have more questions. Thank you. And thank you, Department, for being here, and you'll be able to shed some light on this as well for us, I'm sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fanning. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brett Fanning, I'm the Excise Tax Administrator, the Wyoming Department of Revenue. And a lot of great questions from the committee and truly appreciate it. And I do think I can shed some light on some of those questions that came up. And it's important maybe to have a little background information. So we have 14 sales tax imposition statutes. We've got 14 of them. And this bill is to repeal one of those. And as was noted, it is a significant portion of state sales tax revenue. And I'm not making a decision if it's good or bad. That's not my place here. But I just wanted to kind of outline some of the industries and the residents that this would impact. So right now, as was mentioned, any repair, alteration, or improvement of tangible personal property is currently sales taxable. So for me and members of the committee, anyone in the audience, I get charged sales tax when I get an oil change, okay? Just like was as mentioned. If I have a computer repaired, sales tax on that. If my dad has his golf clubs re-gripped, there would be sales tax on that. If I have my lawnmower needs tuned up, sales tax on that. Snow blower. So this is something that we're all gonna pay, maybe not every single day, but on a consistent basis. Now with industry, they are also going to pay on those same things I outlined. With this repeal, that would also be equipment repairs, would no longer be sales taxable, and that's on big, heavy mining equipment. The majority, but not all of oil field equipment, the rules get a little different in the oil field for sales tax. Furniture repair, machine repair, anything that's tangible, that is what this is impacting. And then, as you can see, when we kind of bring this whole umbrella in, that's maybe why that fiscal note is high, because it's including a repealer on all the things that we use every single day or almost every single day, along with the industry as well. And so when there is testimony that's coming up maybe behind me, it's a tax decrease for everyone here and companies. But on the flip side of that, there is that fiscal note of that impact. So I think that's important to note. It was referenced about installation on homes or buildings or anything like that. So in sales tax, you've got to have an imposition statute. That's what makes something taxable for sales tax. Then we have exemptions to those sales tax imposition statutes. Then we've also got things that are just not taxable because we don't have that imposition statute. It's a little different than other pieces of taxation in Wyoming. So like, for example, any repair, alteration, or improvement of real property, not sales taxable. So if I'm building a home, if I'm an electrician that was referenced, generally not tax on that labor right now. And nothing would change with this bill. Not tax on labor to real property, buildings, land, parking lots, numerous other examples. So this is just the repeal on services to tangible personal property. Couple other points, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Okay, thank you. The tools, there was a question about the tools. For the vast majority of industries, not all, but the vast majority, in any tools I go to buy, I go to a local hardware store, I'm gonna pay sales tax on those tools. Nothing changes with this bill. I'm still gonna have to pay sales tax on, in addition to maybe some other income tax related items. So tools are still sales taxable, nothing changes. There was the question about fairness. Is this fair? Is it not? True, this is generally our only imposition statute for services, and it is related to tangible personal property. Still remaining in our statutes right now, if you sell tangible personal property, that's sales taxable unless there's an exemption. If you rent or lease tangible personal property, that's sales taxable right now as well. And currently, right now, if you repair, alter, or improve tangible personal property, that's taxable. So our sales and use tax statutes are really geared towards tangible personal property, as outlined by the bringer of the bill. So that's kind of how for sales tax, there's other impositions, but the focus is on tangible personal property. Let's see. I did want to outline just some, everyone has my fiscal note. That fiscal note is actually a pretty concrete figure, and it's inflated with Craig estimates and that, but in our major NAICS reports, our classification business codes, we actually have these industries separated out to the best of our ability. It's voluntarily reported information, and my staff does an amazing job in putting them into the right categories. But that figure, the fiscal note, is generally available on our website. So you can take a look at that. You can take a look at it broken down by county. Again, there are major industries in certain areas and in your jurisdictions where they would see this tax decrease. There would be. And then there are other areas of the state where maybe industry isn't as big, but then there's a decrease for residents. Again, not saying that's good or bad. It is just something to consider. With this change, went back through some history. It looks like this came into play in the 60s maybe. I found some rules in 1967 where services were taxable, and then in the early 60s I wasn't able to find those same ones. So where I'm going with that discussion is that this has been intertwined in our statutes for decades. And so I know this bill is effective July 1, 2025, but we've got, for the December 2023 filing period, there were 3,045 companies that reported to us under this NAICS code. So the Department of Revenue will do our absolute best to try and reach out to all of those through a variety of sources, webinars, educational references. But I know I'm gonna get a call on July 2nd saying, hey, I'm being charged a tax on my oil change. And we'll work with them, and there's provisions in statute to actually get that tax back. But I just want to make sure that this is a decades-long tax, and that would be an update to the whole system that would require some administrative impacts. But that's what you pay me for. And I understand that. That's what our taxpayers, that's my job. I just wanted to make everyone aware that this is really intertwined with a lot of our statutes and something to outline. Mr. Chairman, the last thing I had, thanks for indulging me on this outline. So this repeals a sales tax imposition statute. It may be prudent of the committee to go through the exemptions that would no longer be necessary. Because now if we're getting rid of the imposition statute for the repair, alteration, or improvement of tangible personal property, we have a variety of exemptions that those also play into as well. So if you no longer have the imposition statute, you no longer need the exemption. And I know that was a previous goal of this committee, was to kind of streamline the green books, make them consistent, reduce language. Again, I'm not saying that's a goal of this committee, but it is something just to consider, that you would no longer need the exemption. The department's not taken away or anything, you just don't need it because there's no imposition statute anymore. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd stand for
Thank you,
questions.
Mr. Fanning. And Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fanning, if this was to pass, would kicking the effective date out farther help you out with what you're gonna have to do with your computer systems and stuff?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Fanning,
Yeah,
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies. Representative, the answer is yes and no. There is no programming changes for the Department of Revenue with this one. It is all focused upon our vendors. So the auto repair shops that I've mentioned before, the computer repair, the taxidermist. Again, this is wide-ranging, laundry, dry cleaning. It would be upon them to go into their point of sale system and uncheck that box for that being taxable. So that's a simple fix, but it's the educational aspect of it. So the answer to your question is, there's no IT programming. We would have 3 months to do our absolute best to educate everyone. So I don't know if moving that out helps, other than it gives the department more time to educate our vendors that services tangible personal property are no longer taxable.
Thank you, Mr. Fanning. Any follow-up on that? Question I have, and I'm sorry, I wanted to get some clarification because I want to make sure I understand. It's kind of, I'll use the oil change example, which seems to be a pretty good one, but I think it'd be good clarification. So when you go in to get an oil change, there's tangible property. There's oil and who knows, an oil filter, let's say, is part of that transaction. And there's labor that's part of that transaction. But the problem is those transactions are potentially so intertwined that it's, I'm paying for an oil change. Which piece of that is labor, which piece of that is pieces and parts? How does that, that's a level of complexity. I'm not saying one way or the other on this, but I'd just like you to explain, does that, how that works maybe, and help us with that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I love the question. I was an auditor for years and years and years, and in that industry as well. All auto repair places invoice differently, and they just do. So I may be charged $125 for an oil change. Right now, that would be subject to sales tax. But then I've also gotten my engine worked on, and so I had a $100 charge for labor, which was that cheap. $100 charge for labor. I had a $25 charge for shop supplies. I had a $10 charge for a bearing. All of these kind of charges. That's where I referenced in going back through and looking at our rules, because we've intertwined it where you can purchase all of those things without sales tax as the actual auto repair place, because you're going to charge me sales tax on the back end. So it's really a rule change. It's really just a change in philosophy. So the answer to your question is, when I see a oil filter on my repair invoice, if this were to pass, it's gonna have to be promulgated in rules on if now are they required to be charged sales tax, the vendor themselves, when they bought the oil filter. And now you just got an untaxed invoice to the customer. That's really easy to explain as a customer, because then the oil filter, all the lubricants that went into it, all of those are charged tax by the vendor, and then it's just an untaxed invoice to you and me. So it's really a change in dynamic, and that's what I was going to. The administrative impact is really important here.
Sorry, but in this case, though, we wouldn't change the taxation on, we wouldn't be changing the taxation on the vendor's purchase of that. In this case, we would only be changing the fact that an oil change potentially, depending on how they sell that product, because I would think that would make a difference, and I would like you to clarify on that. But it would make a difference if I sell an oil change where I say, it's an oil change. Now, there's tangible personal property involved in that process, right? But if it's rolled together, it's sort of hard to say that was 30 minutes of a mechanic's time. You understand my problem. So my question in this case is, how easy is that to administer and implement? And I'm not trying to make it too convoluted. I just want to make sure I understand, because now all of a sudden, does that half hour of a mechanic's time is not taxed? Is that accurate? So does that make it difficult in some of these cases for these people who just sell an oil change?
Mr. Chairman, love the discussion. I had it with my staff yesterday because these are all items that we are going to have to navigate. The person who charges the $125 flat fee, that it's one item on the invoice, okay, is that different than when someone charges $100 for labor, $25 for the lubricants? We still need to navigate that. And I understand your question. We're just changing the sales tax on the labor. We need to navigate how our vendors are invoicing those, especially for oil changes.
Thank you. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Director. So let me understand this, and I'm following right along with the chairman in explanation on this. What we're doing right now with the oil change, as opposed to something, is we are actually altering a product. We are physically altering something. We are taking a car in, we are taking oil out, we're putting new oil in, we are altering something. As opposed to if you, Representative Stoer's legal counsel might give me advice, but she is not altering anything. So there is separation. Professional advice is not physically altering something, so that is one service. Where if you actually physically interact and exchange, you know, you're actually changing a product. So that in the services involved with the changing of that product are taxed as such, where services that are not in existence would not accrue the same fee, the same tax for the physical alteration. We're talking about actual physical alteration of something, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, I believe that is accurate. Tangible personal property, that's the determining factor.
Thank you for that clarification, because it's that tangible personal property, if it's any working with that is the issue. Thank you, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding this too, and I was gonna take it back to the electrician thing, but I'm gonna keep it on the oil change. So if the business that's doing the business, they would still pay a tax on the product when they bought it, and then would not have to charge a tax on it? Or how is it just not passing that tax through, not paying the tax when they bought it and then not passing it through?
Mr. Fanning, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes. What's important to note is that right now we have a wholesale for resale exemption, and we have had that for the longest time. The way the department has always administered it is if you purchase something that's going to be used in your service, you can purchase it without tax. So right now, the auto repair place is going to purchase all the oil lubricants, the oil filters, all those items without tax because they're going to be charging tax to me when I get my oil changed. So that's how it works currently, and then something to navigate going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Fanning. That's perfect. Representative Stoer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fanning, besides the exemption on services related to real estate, what are the other exemptions that currently exist
Mr. Fanning, thank
on
you.
this imposition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Storer. So I've outlined two, and they're both in the sales tax statute and the use tax statutes. And it would be important really to work with LSO on this, maybe as a conceptual amendment, just to double check Brett's work here. But the first one that I noted was we do have an exemption for the repair, alteration, or improvement of aircraft at an FAA facility. So again, if there's no tax on the imposition, that statute would no longer be needed. It's both in the sales tax statutes and the use tax statutes. The other one I noted is is an exemption for the repair, alteration, or improvement for state-owned property. But it has some additional language in there as well. And so that's why I say it's important to work with LSO on this, because it's really all intertwined in a lot of items. But those are the two, while I was sitting here listening to the testimony that I'd outlined. Those two definitely just reference repair, alteration, or improvement of tangible personal property.
Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fanning, would medical services be included in the exempt list? Because I don't recall ever paying my doctor's sales tax.
Mr. Fanning, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lucas, no. Medical services are not taxable and nothing would change with them in this bill.
I guess we don't qualify as tangible personal property, so.
Mr. Chairman, that's
Sorry,
basically how we administer it. I mean, that's really,
when I
that
break
was accurate.
decorum, I'm not sure what the rule is on that, but I mean, sorry about that. Great. Any other questions for Mr. Fanning? And thank you for this detailed dive. It just helps us understand, and I think, Mr. Filer, thank you too. You did a great job of explaining that, but it just allowed us to open it up to understanding this better, but I appreciate it. Oh, sorry, Representative Lean.
Thank you for coming today. Just one clarity. When you first opened, you said there are 14 current, was it exemptions or was it sales tax categories?
Mr. Fanning.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lee, great question. So we have 14 imposition statutes. So those are things in statute that says, hey, if you're doing this, you've got to charge sales tax on them. Then, as we've mentioned over the past few days, there's dozens of sales tax exemptions. So 14 impositions and then 50+ sales tax exemptions.
Great. And just a quick question for you and possibly the director. And sorry, this is just a hair off topic on the bill, but this to me, this general, these exemptions and these sales tax, I know you guys have trained on this in detail. I have a propensity to say this is probably a great interim topic for us to dive deeply into this and see if other things we can propose. So just a thought that I'll put out there, but I'd love your input on that at some point, so.
Speaking for the excise tax, we'd be happy to do anything this committee desires.
I know you've trained us on it, but I think this new body probably needs to hear some of that. They've probably watched your training from the past. So I didn't mean to get too far off topic on the bill, but I did want to bring that up, so.
Mr. Chairman, Brenda
Thank you,
Henson,
Director.
Director of the Department of Revenue. With excise tax, sales use tax specifically, I just always think it's so important that as we sit here today, we know that the taxpayer is the customer, but it's our vendors. That is where we really have to focus our time and effort, because every change that is made, every vendor has to make those changes within their own structure, their own POS system. And I think to Brett's point, and hopefully this makes it clear, I love the oil change example, because if I am a business that provides that service to tangible personal property, my system may separately track the quarts of oil, the oil filter, and on my bill to that customer, I can go ahead and charge sales tax on those items still, whether it be under current law or if this bill were to pass. But if I'm that same business that provides the exact same thing and I just charge it as a set price and it's incorporated, right now we have many vendors that will just say, you know, it's too big of a pain for me to track this on my books, how much I'm, charging for the oil filter, the quarts of oil. I don't want to get dinged in an audit. So I'm going to charge sales tax on the whole thing. Because if I get audited and they find that I paid too much, I'll get that money back. But if I get audited and I didn't charge the customer, the taxpayer, for that amount, I have to eat that cost in an audit. So I think every time we make any choice on the administration of this tax, because I'll sit here and tell you, for the Department of Revenue, for us to be able to tell all of those vendors that you don't no longer have to charge sales tax on service on tangible personal property, that's easy for us. that clears up a lot of questions that we get from our vendors on a routine basis. But what about the vendor? How does it impact their daily jobs and how that's interpreted? So that's the only thing that I wanted to state, is that providing that information and that clarity is just key to our tax structure. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And any questions for the director, Mr. Fanning? Great, thank you. Oh, sorry, Representative Story, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Looked right past you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Director Henson.
Keep me in line.
I've been trying to wrap my head around this bill for a few days now, and I guess it's still hard to see because of just the process and how we collect the tax. But it would seem that industries or commercial entities that have a lot of tangible personal property in the state would likely benefit the most from this legislation. Is that a fair statement?
Director.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely.
Any other questions? Any other questions for the director and Mr. Fanning? Great, thank you. And by the way, thank you for the detailed explanation and taking a little time to educate us. That was extremely helpful. I really appreciate that. Anybody from the public who would like to speak to this, please? And do fill the chairs, and we'll move along fairly quickly. So, and please speak your names very clearly so we can make sure we get everybody, and then please be as concise as you can. I'm an expert at overrunning my time limits, but anyway, I don't want to hold you up too much, but please be pretty concise. Thank you. Sir.
Mr. Chairman, Bob McLaurin with WHAM again. We stand in opposition to this bill. We're concerned about the fiscal impact on our 99 members around the state. We believe that the best tax policy for sales tax is having a broad base and a lower rate, and we are opposed to narrowing the tax base with this bill. I have with me Todd Freezer from the city of Laramie. I'd like to make a few comments on some of the specifics, but thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Todd Fieser, Assistant City Manager, City of Laramie. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today.
And your last name? I'm sorry.
Fieser, F-E-E-Z-E-R.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. To speak specifically to this and the impacts that it could have in Albany County and Laramie, Wyoming, and to Representative Campbell's comments about the impact locally. Worked with my finance director last night, and the estimated revenue off sales tax in Albany County off this other services is what we consider is about $1.8 million annually. That annual percentage comes down to about 30% to the city of Laramie, roughly $600,000. As we think about the impact of this, although $600,000 might seem like it's a lot of impact, coupled with the cuts in property tax and the other things that are coming on, is going to lead to about a 3% estimated decrease in our locally generated revenues for the city of Laramie. 3% equates to about 1.8 million, has some big impact on what we may do and may require, increased fees on services by the city to make up this revenue. As much as I appreciate some of the comments that sales tax that's collected on this bill would be kept locally and turned over, we also have to think that a lot of these organizations that are doing this are nationally owned, and a lot of that sales tax is taken out, whereas if it's collected here and held here, if it's not sales tax, it'll be taken out of our community, but if it's collected here and held here, it's put back into the community and used locally in our services is an important way to look at the way that revenue stream would flow. I'm going to keep it and end it there. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Novotny. I'm a Johnson County Commissioner. I'm here today on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We are also firmly opposed to this bill. Further erosion of the tax base inhibits our ability to provide essential services. There was the opening statement about that happy rancher. That rancher is not happy when he can't get to town because there's so many potholes in that county road or that road isn't plowed. When you are forced to have continued repairs to your vehicles, that is a hit to the local pocketbook. When we can provide good services like quality county roads that are paid for through not only sales tax, but these other taxes, we have happier ranchers. I want to be clear also, this bill is going to more adversely impact what we would call our hardship counties. And those are the counties that don't have maybe the big box store. They are already suffering leakage problems. So when you further erode their local sales tax, and they have very, very low property tax bases to begin with, you are inhibiting their ability to fund essential government services. In communities and counties that have passed the special purpose tax, which the fiscal note of this is based off of, I believe it's a 5.41 or a 5.49 sales tax rate. If your community has voted to use your special purpose tax to pay for a new fire hall, you are further eroding the ability to collect that additional penny to pay off that project. So I would encourage the committee to defeat this bill. We appreciate the idea of keeping more dollars in people's pockets, but at the end of the day, if we cannot provide essential services because we do not have revenue and there is no backfill, you harm your communities and your constituent safety. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mark Cowan, I come to before you this time as a small business owner in Sweetwater County. I own a car wash in Sweetwater County, and that car wash on one side of it has 4 manual bays. If you pull into one of those manual bays and you wash your car and you put hot wax on during that process, you pay no sales tax. But if you pull to the other side of the car wash and you go through and you have my attendant guide you through my automatic car wash, and you put hot wax on during that car wash, the whole car wash is taxable. So that $10 car wash now gets you a 6% sales tax. If this were to take place, my understanding from listening to this conversation, and not to muddy the water anymore, is the rest of that car wash would now become not taxable, but the hot wax would still be taxable in your oil change scenario. So now I have to calculate, how much did that hot wax cost me on that car wash? Was it 30 cents? And now do I pay sales tax on 30 cents on that car wash? And so as a vendor, as a person who's going to be implementing this, it is somewhat confusing to me. I think it is going to take some work from the department to educate us vendors on how to implement this as well. And I'll stand for questions.
Great. Any questions for these gentlemen? And question for you, just a question, something that had been brought up in terms of the sales tax on this. One of you, sorry if I cut anybody off, I didn't mean to. If I sometimes I miss, I didn't see anybody. But a question for you, because the sales tax that we're talking about removing is sales tax that's being paid by the taxpayer. That's what's being removed here, right? And you'd mentioned that some of that sales tax is being taken out of the state, but that would be sales tax that, in my mind, just stays in the state. So the money we're leaving is in the end user's pocket, I believe. I was just curious your view. Maybe I'm seeing this wrong, so I just wanted to make sure I had a clear picture.
Chairman Locke, I believe my description was a little bit different. If this sales tax is removed, I don't believe we'll see a decrease in the hourly shop rate, right? And so that the statement that money would stay in the first user might be correct, but probably the hourly rate would stay the same. So that money would go to the business, and if it's a national business, a lot of that money is whisked out of our state, unfortunately. The other scenario, if the sales tax stays on, it stays in the state, it stays locally, and it gets used in the state and used locally.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm sorry that I didn't understand that scenario perfectly, so. Great. Any other questions for these gentlemen? Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to throw something out, and while this is probably true or and a bigger concern for Laramie County, revenues. I just thought you all might have some thoughts on it. So partly because I was working on some legislation related more to property tax. And I see Mr. Gills here in case I'm wrong, he can correct me. But I was looking at the commercial personal property taxation in the state. And in that case, it became clear that it's our data centers that actually represent almost a quarter of the tangible personal property in Wyoming. And we do tax them on their property tax, but they actually were exempted from sales tax in purchasing all the equipment that exists here, and much of it here in Laramie County. And so they've already been exempted from sales tax on the purchase of that equipment as one of our exemptions. But it would seem that given how much tangible personal property that represents in the state, and as Director Henson testified earlier, that having a lot of that would mean that industry would benefit from this reduction in sales tax as well on just the servicing and repair of that equipment. That would be a significant reduction, certainly for Laramie County here in tax revenues. And does that make sense to all of you?
Anyone want to address that? Thank you, Representative Storr. Any other questions? Okay. Anyone else would like to speak? Thank you, gentlemen. By the way, thank you, all of you, for taking some time with us. Appreciate you guys coming. Anyone else like to speak on this bill? Sorry. Absolutely. Representative Feiler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, just with some of the comments, one, I was wrong on that. As far as labor on, forgot real property, personal property, two different things. I still think my house is my personal property, but that's beside the point. Mr. Chairman, some of the, stuff we've heard so far is it's gonna be hard for local mechanic shops and other places like this, or people that repair your computers. It's gonna be hard for them to understand that they don't have to collect a tax on their labor. This was brought to me by a small business owner, not a data center. But it was brought to me by a small business owner. And it's real simple. A lot of the mechanics in the state use a program called TechNet. TechNet, they put everything in, it separates their labor, it separates their parts, what they need to charge the parts for their percentages and all that. And they literally click a button. They click a little thing. Either it's taxable or it's not taxable. So now they can just click the button, the labor. You don't have to pay taxes on that. We keep going down, finding out what is tangible. I think there was a comment that, says, that they don't, as us as patients at hospitals, we're not owned. But we don't own our mechanic either. And I think that's kind of the road I'm going down with this. I think, as far as tax exemptions, I heard from Representative Storr about data centers. I happen to own 3 data centers. And I can tell you that as far as repairs, mostly on data centers, is done in-house with the parts that they already have. It has nothing to do with what they're selling. So I think that, we do not collect a lot of sales tax revenue on labor from data centers in Wyoming at all. The department had brought up a few good points about maybe their rulemaking processes on how to get the notices out there for everybody to allow them to know that they don't have to collect the sales tax anymore. I'd have no problems taking that out further. As Representative Stiver asked, if we need to take that out further, that's fine with me. I have no issues with that. And as far as all the other exemptions, there's a lot of questions on exemptions. There's a lot of exemptions in the state of Wyoming, a lot. And we keep talking about property tax, and then maybe, manufacturing, sales tax exemptions, all these different things. And there is a lot, and I do believe there is some merit, definitely, that we should honestly look at these in the interim to see, especially with our property tax cuts, how we can make sure our towns and counties are whole as much as possible and give them some freedoms too, in order to be able to collect revenues. But there was one other comment that was made that, the Jolly Rancher driving down his road, most of our roads in Wyoming have been deteriorating for the last 20 years. We can actually get some of those researches from the Department of Transportation. But I also believe with the fiscal note, I don't believe that number right there is gonna make or break our counties. There's many counties in the state of Wyoming that have large surpluses of money. I believe that this would allow people to keep their money, not own their mechanics, their computer repair person are not tangible items. We should not pay taxes on people. I think this puts that money back into the consumer's pocket, which I think would actually turn into more sales tax revenue. So I think it would actually end up helping these towns and counties. We see the fiscal note of this is what's gonna take away, but what also can it give us? That's the one thing we can't get, right? But if we do the real research, tax cuts usually create economic growth. And this is a small little piece of our whole big tax process that we have that could actually create economical growth even in those small communities by keeping the money in our pockets and letting us go buy a tangible item. And one last comment I'd like to say is that we heard that, your mechanic will not probably lower his labor rate. Yeah, they will. In this county, 6%. 6% of that labor rate goes away, right there off the top. So they will lower that. And that's maybe their labor rate stays the same, but they don't have to charge that tax onto it. If it's $1,000 for labor, you're paying $1,060. Now your labor just went down to $1,000. So it is a savings to the consumer. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any more questions.
Thank you, Representative Filer. Question, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much a question as an observation. I think the subject has merit, and I think that it's something that is significant enough that we should probably move this bill forward and let the committee as a whole make a decision on this.
Let's keep this piece, questions to Representative Filer, and rather than a conversation on the bill right now. Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Filer. I may be missing something here, but I'm just looking at this on how this benefits the people of Wyoming, and what I'm seeing is this benefits corporations more than the consumers. I just do not see the benefit to the people of the state changing the tax code to maximize profits for corporations that are not going to spend that money that they are receiving in the state, whereas the current tax system brings that money into the state of Wyoming.
Representative Filer.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, understand those concerns. State of Wyoming, your largest employer is a small business owner, it's not a large corporation. State of Wyoming, the small businesses are actually your largest employer in the state of Wyoming. So to say, yes, there is a handful of larger industry that will probably benefit from this, there's no doubt about it, but I don't want to pick winners and losers on this one. I want to help out that small mechanic that lives in my district, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that he doesn't have to charge his customers sales tax on labor that he performs because he's not owned, he's not a tangible item. And those larger corporations, I believe the same thing for them. They shouldn't have to pay for the labor of somebody that works on their equipment or a data center or anybody else. But I think that's the key point is how this helps Wyoming is the fact that because our industry is largely made up of small business owners, not large business owners, that actually helps the people of Wyoming a lot more. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Filer. Representative Filer, I'm sorry about that. Any other questions? Great, thank you. Seeing no questions, anyone else want to speak to this? If not, we'll close public comment. Okay, go ahead, Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the concept of this bill, but I'm going to be a no vote because this needs to go to an interim topic. We need to look at all the exemptions and how this is going to play out. With everything else going on, what we're doing on the, with the property tax bills that are coming and that, I love the concept, but I'm going to have to be a no vote because this is something we need to look at as an interim topic.
Fair enough, but let me ask you guys first, what would you guys, with your pleasure, what would you like to do with the bill? Representative Lucas moved the bill. Representative Brown seconded it. So great, sorry, back. It's all right, I'm done. Okay, no, we're further discussion on the bill, please. Representative Wharf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am going to speak against the bill. I'm a no vote. I don't want it to be lost on the bringer of the bill. I think this is very important. But I contend that we're trying to get our hands around the whole elephant. And to me, this is just taking a little bite now. And I really think what we need to be doing, we need to be looking at the whole tax structure in this state and get away from doing all these piecemeal attempts to address the elephant in the room. So I don't want the bringer of the bill to think that it's been lost. I think the committee understood exactly what he's saying. And I would hope that he would entrust this committee to give this a fair look when we reevaluate the entire system. That's what I would like to be doing. So that's going to be why I'm going to be a no vote on this bill. It's not that I don't support the idea. I just think we got to do it all rather than just, I don't like doing piecemeal. And that's what I feel like we've been doing over the years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wharf. Representative Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly understand and appreciate the comments made by the good representatives, and I'm here for you when we start looking at the entire tax structure. It will take some time, and I expect it to be a topic of maybe a couple or three interims, because this is a very large elephant. At the same time, we have an opportunity here to put a few bucks back in the pockets of our residents. I replaced a furnace last year, and the labor was far more than the cost of the furnace, and that would have saved me a few dollars. Anybody who's faced with an expensive car repair bill knows that every dollar counts, and sometimes the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And we have that opportunity to take a bite of it off right now and include all of this, wrap it all up together when we look at the entire structure. But I'm not thinking of how we're going to benefit Microsoft so much as I am how we will benefit our citizens.
Thank you, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an observation, once again, that labor related to real estate is exempt, so you would not have paid sales tax on the labor for the furnace in your home. That's already exempt from this tax. I have to say that so the legislature does look to the Revenue Committee for expertise and guidance. In an ideal world, we're here to be the ones that actually understand our tax and revenue systems. And from that perspective, I think I agree with Representative Stivar and Representative Wharf that taking this up in an interim topic would make more sense to me. I'm still not convinced that, while I appreciate the thoughts of the bringer of the bill, it's our job to kind of weigh the benefit of a tax versus what we're able to do with that tax. And we've heard from local communities, how much those revenues are important. And we're looking at a lot of bills to impact the revenues at the local level. We're going to hear from the county commissioners, I think, after today, their concerns about a lot of bills that are being considered in this legislature. And certainly one of the things why we tax is we provide that common services that industry or individuals can't. That kind of investment in infrastructure in our communities, that really does make a difference, that can make them prosperous places. And we should not discount how important that is for our communities across the state. So I would like to consider this in the interim. I feel like we still don't have a good sense of what this impact would do and whether it really would provide a benefit to our communities by reducing that tax. So, thank you.
All right, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect the opinions of my fellow committee here. Mr. Filer, or Representative Filer, I'd just like for you to look at this as not a loss, okay? If we move this to the interim, it's still going to be looked at, and I think we ought to take diligence doing that. Thank you for presenting this bill. We'll go forward with it.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a low tax, no tax principal person, but I also have a responsibility to my counties to make sure that my firefighters, my police are all employed. And I know that there's some large tax breaks coming for the people that are going to drastically impact those. And so I feel comfortable with this topic coming to the interim so that we can add it to the puzzle. So that when we build that puzzle, it all is fair for the counties and the citizens. So thank you for bringing this today, Mr. Filer, and know that I do support you on principle. And today we need to put it all together with the whole puzzle to get it pulled together.
Thank you. Any other? No, I'm good. Okay, very good. Any other conversation on this? All right. Let's, if you'd please take the roll. Thank you.
This is a roll call vote on House Bill 126, Sales Tax on Services Repeal. Representative Brown?
No.
Representative Campbell?
No.
Representative Lean?
No.
Representative Lucas?
Yes.
Representative Riggins, excused?
Excused.
Representative Storer?
No.
Representative Stivar?
No.
Representative Wharf?
No.
Chairman Locke?
Aye.
We have 2 aye, 6 no, and 1 excused, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. House Bill 126, Sales Tax on Service Repeal, has not passed the committee. Thank you, Representative Filer, for presenting this. And any other business for the committee today? We got through 3 bills on time. That's a new record for us, so that's good. Any other comments, questions, committee? Secretary, are we okay? Fantastic.